Hey everybody. As promised, here's a lecture that you can watch from the comfort of your own home or couch or somebody else's couch. So let's jump into chapter one. It provides us with an overview of business intelligence and analytics and, of course, data science. Fear not, you've probably already looked ahead and seen there's 39 slides. I'm not going to read every single one of them to you. You can do that on your own. But just know high level, here's what we're going to start with. And getting at the basic level, right? Describing what is BI, what are those concepts, the methodology that actually goes along with it, and then the analytics and the applications that, of course, support it. So, true to form, I didn't have you watch Moneyball just to kill time and to make myself, an easy first couple weeks. This really does set the stage for a great example that the text also uses as well in what they call their vignettes. So this is kind of the first one, and it's talking about sports analytics. Obviously, you saw firsthand in the movie. Clearly a big business. Right now we're looking at 145 billion in revenues. Okay, so keep in mind this isn't just what you saw with Billy Beane and the Oakland A's. That's definitely part of it, the on the field, right? But we use it for other things too. One example that the text gives is of course gambling. How can we use BI to better predict what team to bet on, but also all the way down to what merchandise do we want available, in the stadiums. Those of you that are local, I know some of you even work at the venue. A lot of BI was put in to determine, pricing for the Royals and the Chiefs. It's not an accident that you pay $12 to park at a baseball game in Kansas City, but you pay $60 for a football game. Why? The analytics shows people will pay it, and they do. So if you look at slide 4, here's kind of one example of charting out the tiers of ticket holders as well as their propensity or their likelihood, if you will, to actually renew a ticket. Okay, so this, as a business person, can help us do a lot of things. One, are we pricing our plans correctly? If we are, which of these demographics or groups should we go after first? And if not, do we change our pricing strategy to better support higher probabilities in our favor? Okay, so here's another great example. It doesn't always have to be about baseball. Here's one for football. So again, looking at kind of breaking down that field in a grid-like structure of what we call a heat map. And we'll see a little bit more of this later. But, so as a quarterback now, I can look at this and see, where do I throw the most completions at? Where am I the most successful? And of course, as a defensive line, I of course want to know, all right, where is Tom Brady most likely to throw the ball so I can set up my defense accordingly? Okay. Here's a place where both of my worlds kind of collide with healthcare and the BI space. Is we're doing a lot with being able to anticipate the likelihood of an athlete getting injured, and this is true to form where I can actually use technology to record an athlete or anybody for that matter doing a single leg squat and hold. And we measure, of course, a number of factors, and some of them are kind of shown on the screen here. I can then take that data and tell you the likelihood of that player's risk for injury, which is clearly huge, right? Those of you that are, my collegiate athletes, many of you are on scholarships, and, it's a huge detriment if you can't be on the field or on the court. Professional sports, the stakes are even higher, right? I have a player that I'm paying millions of dollars a year, and he or she gets injured. So I'm paying them to sit on the bench if I could have potentially, one, prevented an injury through BI, or, just have that mindset that, hey, this player is not in a condition to be playing, and could I do rehab early before further damage occurs? So again, here's some of the high-level discussion questions we can think about. So, kind of pause for a moment and think through these after you've read the text and kind of watched this lecture to get yourself a better handle, okay? But how does this impact the business environment, right? So we're seeing classes, fill up, in the data science space, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. But what does it really mean? It means I need more hardware. I need more software. And with that comes bandwidth, right? I'm moving more data over the wire, so I need the infrastructure to be able to move that data quickly, right? I need to be able to collaborate on it, communicate with it, okay? How do I manage my data? Okay? And then we start to talk about what we call data warehouses. Where do I keep that data? How easy is it to get to? Who gets access to it? And then the age-old question, how long do I keep it, right? How do I support these new tools? We'll talk about a array of tools throughout the semester, and what you're going to find is not a lot of people know these tools yet. Okay, you're in that small minority that's going to get that advantage of learning a lot of these. Okay, and then kind of that last point they make is it's got to be available anytime, supported anywhere. When we talk about the truly global business environment, I've got to be able to access it, all hours of the day, absolutely anywhere. So with that, I'm going to jump ahead here. And when we think about analytics, okay, I want you to think about it in three buckets, if you will: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Okay, and that could get a little confusing, but this chart does a really nice job of breaking that down. Okay, so descriptive: what happened, what is happening right now. We report on it. There's dashboards. We warehouse that data. Okay, and hopefully with that we get well-defined problems. Okay. Most of our work is taking place in this space right now, this first kind of tier, if you will. Then predictive. What's going to happen? Why will it happen? So to do that, we're going to mine data. We're going to mine textual data. We're going to look at web data. We're going to forecast. And hopefully this will allow us to project what might happen. Okay, great example here. Let's project what kids' toys are going to be hot at Christmas, right? So we know what to stock, how much of it we're going to need, what will our popular items be, right? We go back to our sports venues, start to predict what we're going to look like in week 10 of the NFL season. What is our team going to look like at the All-Star break if we're a baseball team? You kind of get the idea. And then prescriptive. What should I do and why should I do it? Okay? Looking at how we optimize, running simulation models, okay? Decision modeling, expert systems, all of these things factor into that prescriptive side, okay? The best possible business decisions and actions, right? So a lot really goes into this. So I'm going to jump ahead now. And let me show you another example here. Again, selfishly, this is where my worlds collide, so it makes it pretty easy to talk about. For years in healthcare, and still today, we've been plagued with the problem of slips and falls, right? A patient that isn't steady on their feet, gets out of bed unattended, and slips and falls. Okay, this can happen at the hospital, it can happen at a nursing home, anywhere in between. Okay, here's what most people don't know. Up until recently, if you slipped and fell at the hospital, and let's say you broke your hip, it would be on the hospital to pay for that hip replacement, okay? And then the hospital would then turn that over to the insurance company, okay? Through data now, we actually can create this scoring algorithm to say this patient, based on the answer to these 10 questions, has a higher propensity to fall, okay? So if that's the case, the hospital or the care institution, whoever's providing care for these patients, have to put additional safeguards in place. If they don't, and that patient falls, they are now no longer allowed to seek reimbursement from the insurance company. So what this has done is this has put the pain point, literally and figuratively, back on the hospital, right? So I've got to take care of my patient population, because if they fall, and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to, it's now on me as an institution to pay $80,000 for a hip replacement, okay? All right, and then of course they give the example of Humana, huge healthcare organization, does a lot of third-party billing for Medicare, so ginormous, right? To actually look at the right metrics to measure, okay? And then last, in a predictive approach, looking at who's our highest risk, okay? And you're starting to see some of this in action already, right? Where health insurance companies have taken a strong position against people that smoke, right? You're high risk, don't smoke. If you do admit to being a tobacco user, we're going to increase your premiums significantly because you're a higher risk. If you're higher risk, you cost more to insure. If I'm an insurance company, I don't want to have to insure you because you're too expensive. Okay, so here's kind of a good breakdown, and I'm not going to go through every step of this, but just take some time kind of reading through this, looking at, what we call the value chain, right? So why do I do it? So some of the things we give in here, like trends analysis, targeted promotions, and we see this a lot, right? So November and December, we see targeted promotions around Christmas, type things, purchasing gifts for people. And then what do we see come January? We start to see a lot of advertisements for gym memberships and Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig, because now that's my time. New Year's resolution. Okay, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat healthier. So it's no surprise that you see those in those time frames. Predictive tells us that these are the times to do these things, right? Okay, we can't go any further without talking about this for a minute. Okay, so what is big data, right? You might think we're taking a step back to the preschool level here, but again, we're looking at data that can't be stored or processed because it's too big or it's not easily accessible. Okay, in some cases, it's also huge, it's structured or unstructured, and it's continuous. Okay, so we think about the three V's: volume, variety, and velocity. Okay, but here's the other thing I want to challenge you with. Okay, big data doesn't necessarily have to be big, okay? And that sounds like a play on words, but we can solve big problems with very little data. We can be very predictive, extremely predictive with very little data, okay? Let me give you a great example. Look in the academic world. We can predict fairly accurately what student performance will be based on analytical data on your activity in Blackboard. So for example, a class like this that has a heavily posted online component, I post all the lecture content out there, I provide you with all of these resources. I can do a really good job of predicting what the student grade breakdown will be before the semester is even over, based on the amount of minutes students spend in the respective areas in Blackboard. Okay, so it's very small data. I can do it all in Excel. It's very easy to do. So take that problem and then start to magnify it out into larger scale, and you can see how we absolutely want to crunch these bigger problems, which are bigger data and does require a lot more effort to dive into. So last, I think it's kind of worthwhile that the text highlights this as well, just to kind of articulate the changing landscape that we've seen. So here's how it typically works as new fields evolve, right? So data analytics, business intelligence, data science are all the buzzwords for new stuff, right? So, and Rockhurst is a textbook example of this, right? So we started off 5 years ago with a certificate program, a graduate certificate, right? So gives you, 15 credit hours worth of coursework. That quickly then spawned also a master's program. So where are we now? An undergraduate program, okay, which you're a part of. Now, where do we see that offered? A variety of places, right? Management information systems programs, which this very closely resembles engineering, marketing, statistics, computer science, and quite frankly, guys, it's new. People still struggle with where this goes. At Rockhurst, it lives in the Hellsberg School of Management. In other schools, it'll probably live in the computer science department or maybe the math department. Okay, so it can be all over the board. So there's kind of your 30,000 foot preview of Chapter 1. So if you haven't already, be sure you've read Chapter 1, go through this, recording here, and then complete the Chapter 1 assignment that will be posted in Blackboard.